on today's episode, we are going to be going over the entire build and the process of creating a replica of John Mayer's 2019 World Tour Pedalboard. Before we get into the build, I wanted to say a few things. Shout out to my friend Vince at Vagabond Audio. You're going to be hearing about what he has done to help me create this board. And as well, for those of you who are wanting a tone demo of the board, it is coming. I have a 2-Rock Traditional Clean on order. I ordered it back in September. Hopefully it'll be here soon, and I'm gonna save tone demos until I get that in, when I can mic it up and really do the board justice and get some really wicked John Mayer tones out of it. I will be doing a series which kind of highlights songs that Mayer performed during the 2019 World Tour and what pedals he used in variations that occurred. So stay tuned for that series coming out in the summer. And guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. All right, so as you guys can see, the board's prepped. I have all the risers installed on it. It's ready to go. What I'm gonna do next is put all the Velcro down, and I first thought I was going to do what a lot of people do and only put the Velcro down underneath where the pedals go. But John, as we know, throughout the different legs and even during rehearsals, he actually changed his layout and kind of what went where a lot of the time on the board. And I'd really like to experiment and kind of try and see what he was thinking and maybe get some of those tones as well. So some pedals that aren't on it right now might eventually get added on or changed out to do some comparisons and just to understand a bit more what he's doing. So what I'm actually going to do is lay out Velcro across the whole board, kind of like a traditional build. I'm going to be using Velcro brand Velcro instead of using pedalboard tape, just because it's going to be sturdy enough, unlike the stuff that kind of comes with the regular pedal train board. But it's also going to be a lot stronger. It's going to have a lot more of a hold to it. So I'm going to use that, lay it down across everything where the pedals are going to go. That way I have freedom to change things if I need and kind of mess around with everything. But it'll still be permanent enough where if I kick it, it's not going to move. It's not going to budge at all. So let's get the Velcro down and then we can talk about pedals and ordering. Thought I'd show the brand Velcro that I'm using. It's going to be this stuff right here. Like I said, it's got the strength to hold 10 pounds on it. None of my pedals weigh nowhere near that, so fingers crossed this stuff should really hold and be quite a permanent solution anyways. So now the Velcro is all down on the board. I have it all in the position. Next is going to be laying all of the pedals down onto the board to make sure that the spacing and everything is absolutely perfect. Once they're all down and I'm happy with the layout overall, then I'm going to start worrying about cabling and power. So let's lay all the pedals down and get them on the board. Bit of an update time. The board has all the pedals on it, as you can see there. So next step is going to be adding the zip tie anchors onto the board. I'm going to put them all across, and that way the power cords and the patch cables are all going to be tied down nice and neatly across, and it's going to look a lot cleaner. Obviously for a board where you're swapping things in and out quite a lot, not the best, just because you're going to be ripping them up and you have to really give yourself a lot more room with the cords. But for me, there's not going to be a whole lot that's going to be switching in and out, so I'll leave myself a little bit of room so that I can change if I need, but for the most part, everything's going to be anchored down for power and patch cable wise. Alright, day 2 of the board build. I got as far as putting all of the zip tie anchors down and starting to put the zip ties through them last night. Got pretty tired and I decided I'd rather just do it all today once I'm a bit fresher, so hopefully I can get this thing done today. If not, it might be a bit of a 3-day board build, but whatever it takes just to get it done properly and looking really good. So right now I'm going to focus on getting the zip ties through the zip tie anchors, and then I'm going to start to work on some of the cabling and kind of try and get section by section done of the board, and we'll see how she looks. Alright, so I thought it'd be a good time to quickly talk about the cables I'm going to be using. Some people are kind of solder snobs and they really prefer soldered cables. That's fine. I got obviously nothing against soldered cables, but there's a kind of a wrong belief that solder-less cables aren't as superior. As long as you buy a good quality brand of patch cables, no matter if they're soldered or solder-less, you're going to be fine. I mean, this board here is not going to need soldered cables like it could, but I really honestly prefer these right here, which is the Free the Tone solderless cable kit. They actually don't make these anymore, so I stockpiled up on a lot of these packages. They come with 10 pieces or 10 ends, so you get 5 cables and a ton of cabling. I probably got like 30 to 40 patch cables of these because these are all I use. They're expensive, but they work really, really well. And in the 2 years that I've been using these patch cables, I've never had one go wrong. The only time they've ever had an issue is because I haven't built the cable properly. So that said, I don't think these are a bad option at all. I think these are actually a really good option. They're super easy to build and they're the right balance of flexible, like the actual cable jack size, and they look great. If you look, if it's not gonna focus, I'll just insert some B-roll. Yeah, I'll just insert some B-roll footage over what they look like, but they're great. I love them. Yeah, so I'm gonna start throwing those on and trying to get some of the wiring down. Alright, so quick update time. Spent way too long doing this as my first time actually like using the zip tie anchors and trying to make everything super neat, but it's first time for everything, I guess. I have about 4 connections left to go. Everything is powered on and that's all working at least, which is a good thing. Next, pretty much just finish off the actual patch cables, make sure everything is plugged in and connected where it's supposed to be. Then I'm going to run a test of the board, make sure a signal comes through and everything is working as it should. Once that's done, I can tighten up all the zip tie anchors and then clean it up and it'll be done. So I'll catch up with you guys once that's all done. Okay, so it's finally all done. I've been at it the better part of the day, day 2. It's currently 9:22, and I started at I think 3:15. So it took majority of day 2. I'm exhausted, but it's all done, and I'm really happy with how it came out for the first time. Using all the zip tie anchors and trying to do a really neat build like this, I'm super stoked. I think it came out really well. So we'll catch you back in the main part of the video. Alrighty, you guys, so let's talk about the board itself and the design behind it. So first off, I gotta give a massive shout out to my friend Vince at Vagabond Audio. He built this Leslie loop pedal that we'll be talking about shortly, as well as he hooked it up with the riser he built for the pulp and peel, like on John's board. This pedal that was kind of behind the katana in the second row had its own little lift just to make it a little bit easier to activate. And then of course, the board itself, he was able to hook me up with a custom board, 40 by 18, which no other company actually made that you could just order. And he hooked it up really hard for me, and he's just a great dude. So please, you guys, go give him a follow on Instagram at Vagabond Audio, and as well check out his YouTube and hit him up if you have any custom pedal board needs or need any advice even. He's a great dude and always wants to help people out, so I can't recommend him and what he's done enough. So let's talk about signal chain for the board. I'm going to rip through this, you guys. Everything is going to be identical to how John ran it, save for the drive section, which I'll talk about when we get to it. So we have the Polytune 3. I have the miniature version here. John used the full size, but it's the exact same tuner. We have a script very early on, Keeley Katana with the knob in, going into the Jhs pulp and peel for compression. Now, John only had a compressor pedal on his board maybe half of the tour, if that. He really did use the slide rig more. The pulp and peel was on during rehearsals, but I wanted to support Josh and give the pulp and peel a try for right now. I am going to purchase an Origin Effects slide rig and kind of test them out, shoot them out and see the differences and why John maybe went with the slide rig over the pulp and peel in the long run. Now we have the Exotic Effects XW1 wah. We know that John experimented with the CAE, Custom Audio Electronics wah, that he had been using for a very long time for rehearsals, but then he moved on to the full tone wah for actually the first few shows of the tour. Immediately though, that got switched out for the Exotic Effects wah. My personal opinion is it's the best wah in the world. Then the drive section now. We move on to our first pedal that was blacked out, but we know that it was a Hermedia Audio Zendrive 2. Now for rehearsals and the first leg of the tour, Asia and Australia, the drive section was comprised of a Zendrive 2, a Klon, a TS10, over here we'd have a Smoky Signal tubeless overdrive. Then we have the chorus drive loop, which has the Blackstone Appliances MOSFET overdrive and a black screw CE2. We know it's black screw, whether it's made in Japan or made in Taiwan, that we obviously don't know. I did go with the green label made in Japan though, because why not? Now, the drive section changed in the second leg of the tour for North America and stayed the same for the European leg, the last leg of the tour, and that was a Klon into a TS10 into the Mesa Boogie Flux 5. Now, the drive section did shrink, but this Flux 5 is insanely powerful and able to give John all of his core sounds, and maybe he just decided that he didn't need all the options and he just was comfortable with having 3 drive pedals as his main sounds. Now, of course, John did add things like the Chase Plus Condor for one show he experimented with. The Solo Dallas Storm was actually a very big part of the tour board that he was swapping in. He used it in place of the Katana, the compressor, and the Klon at one point, and even just added it in as an additional pedal. That's a pedal that I'm looking forward to getting and trying out on the board. But from my board, in order to get the best of both worlds with the drive section, here is the signal chain and what I have done. Zendrive 2 goes into the Saritone Centura, one of the best Klon clones on the market. Now, John actually had next the Qtron Plus, which is what I have done. That has another V1 Katana in the loop with the knob out, which is kind of important. He didn't have the knob in, he had the knob out. After the Qtron Plus, he went to the TS10, and then we have the Mesa Boogie Flux 5 I have next. Now, this is where you could kind of switch depending on what section or of the tour you want to go for. Next would be the Flux 5 or the Smoky Signal. I just have Flux 5 into Smoky Signal, or the Studio Daydream Diana, the only clone of the Smoky Signal currently available on the market. Then I have that going into the Chorus Drive Loop, which again, Blackstone and the CE2. After that, we move up here to the Boss OC3. John did experiment with the OC3 post and pre-drive. Mainly, it did end up being post, so that's why I have it here, and this is where it actually sat during rehearsals, so I put it in the same spot because the drive section is larger. Obviously, in the North American and European legs of the tour, it actually was over here, but up here is where it sits. Next, we move on to the New Neighbor Slate, as John labeled it, reverberation, essentially love on the weekend in a pedal. We move over to the ever so staple on his board, the Strymon Flint. And now we have another blacked out pedal, which actually is the Providence Delay 80s or the DLY 83, my personal favorite delay I've ever owned or tried. Next, we move up to the Way Huge Aquapus. Now I'm using a Mark II instead of the Mark I that John used. I did have a Mark I purchased, paid for, and at the last minute before he shipped it to me, the seller backed out and refunded me. So that's super sucky, but I do plan on getting a Mark I Aquapus soon, so that will change. But for right now, Mark II is what I'm using. Next, we move on to another blacked out pedal. I have talked to the guys at Chase Bliss actually about this because we do know that John had a Tonal Recall Red Knob mod and a Warped Final Hi-Fi on his board. Based on the positioning in the chain, I believe it's the tonal rate called Red Knob mod, the one that was blacked out and stayed for pretty much the whole tour on his board. It just makes sense. It's in with the delays. Why wouldn't it be an extra digital delay set differently for him to use? After the Red Knob mod, we skip over to the Providence Chrono delay, another great digital delay with tap tempo. Now, a lot of people think this is very similar to the Providence Delay 80s. Well, it is. It also isn't at the same time. There are some vast differences between the two. Next, we move on to another blacked out pedal, which is a New Neighbor Inspire. This pedal here was the mainstay in terms of chorus on his board, staying for probably 80% of the tour. It did get replaced with the Free the Tone Tri-Avatar chorus, but as it being the one that stayed on the board the longest, it's what I went with. Eventually, I'll get a Free the Tone Tri-Avatar and shoot them out, and we can kind of see, maybe figure out why he actually switched from that. Now, and this is normally where John here would have the last pedal in the chain, which is the Jhs Kirkland Boost. Kirkland Boost obviously is a one-off pedal that you can't just go out and buy. I do have something planned in the future to kind of mimic that, so you guys will just have to stay tuned for that to come out. Now, in the meantime, for my board, this is where there's one slight change. As I mentioned before, my buddy Vince at Vagabond Audio built me this Leslie Nielsen looper pedal. Now, John added this at the beginning of the North American leg of the tour, and essentially it had this picture of Leslie Nielsen on it, a red LED, and a switch, and one output jack at the back. Now, what I believe this did is it activated a Leslie speaker kind of behind the scenes and behind all the amps and everything that was mic'd up. We know that John did use a Leslie 122 during the Search for Everything World Tour, and so I believe that that's what he did again. Now, my buddy Vince and I figured out what we do is build this as a looper pedal, and this actually goes over here and activates the Micro Vent by Neo Instruments, the best rotary speaker simulator pedal on the planet, and the black version is actually a Leslie 122 speaker, rotating speaker emulator. So it's identical to what John would have used, or we believe he used. So this turns on, red LED, and it activates that, blended in to act as if it's a separate Leslie speaker cabinet mic'd up. Vince did an amazing job with this, as John cheekily had just a picture of Leslie Nielsen on it. And that's what we've done, the exact same picture with the red LED. So that is really cool and something super unique to this build and this board. And that's the last pedal out into the amps. A lot of people have asked if the pedals are in front or behind in the effects loop. And the answer is John uses high headroom clean amps. He doesn't need an effects loop because the amps aren't overdriving themselves. His overdrive tones come from the pedals. So it doesn't make any sense to use an effects loop for anything. So everything goes in front of the amps. And there you guys have it. I hope you enjoyed the build video. It was a very long process, but as I've said a few times, I am extremely happy with how it came out. This is going to be a really wicked board, and I'm really looking forward to sharing tone demos and clips and just anything that I learned from this board now that I have a replica of what John used on his tour. Now we can really start to dive in and figure out what he was thinking, why he chose this pedal over something else, and kind of learn from it. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. And if you've made it this far into the build video, thank you so much for watching. I know the camera quality hasn't been the absolute best. I am going to be buying myself a new Sony camera that'll be really good for autofocusing and doing a lot of stuff. So improvements to that are going to be coming as well, because I've done a little bit of the editing so far and I'm not totally happy with how some of the stuff came out. So I apologize if the autofocusing hasn't been that great during filming, but that is going to change. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. Join the John Mayer Gear Lounge on Facebook if you haven't already. That's a great place with over 3,000 members to discuss John Mayer and his gear and tone, and really connect with John Mayer fans and other guitar players who love his tone. As well, please go check out the John Mayer Gear Lounge show on YouTube. As I mentioned before, that's a podcast that myself and a few of my other friends host, that we talk about different things with John Mayer's gear, from the black one to his amps to his pedals to all this other crazy stuff, and just really nerd out and dive deep into the John Mayer world of gear. So you guys, thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, we'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.